Hello and welcome to the Sky Sports Golf Podcast presented by Callaway. Wow, folks, what a major championship. What a thrilling final round, which had a bit of everything. The leaders stuck in reverse at times, players from further back making a real charge, a weather delay with some biblical rain. As the final group teed off on the 14th, 5 were tied for the lead. And the man who outlasted them all, who emerged from Oakmont's brutal examination of every club in the bag, but even more so of your mental fortitude, the only player to finish under par, the only player not to finish over par as well, and one of the most unlikely of champions was JJ Spaun. Hats off to him. A massive congratulations after one of the grittiest, gutsiest performances I can ever recall. So much to unpack, so many contenders to discuss. We're going to get into all of that, and to do so, I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast Brandel Chamblee. Hello to you, Brandel.
Hello, Jamie. Nice to join you.
Well, thank you for joining us. And having flown through the night, now back in the UK, after 4 days of getting kicked in the teeth by Oakmont, coming off a T23 finish, many of you will have seen him birdie the 18th and throw his arms in the air in a state of delirium, having not made a birdie all day up to that point. I'm delighted to say Matt Wallace has joined us. Matt, on a scale of 1 to 10, just how exhausted right now?
Yeah, pretty tired, guys. Yeah. That's the hardest test of golf I think I've ever had to experience. Went into scorer's tent and asked when's the next US Open at Oakmont, just so we know.
Yes.
And I think it's in about 8 years' time. So whether I'm still out on tour or not, and the lady inside said, "You're not the first person to ask this." So yeah, it was a brutal test this week.
Yeah, and it showed on TV, and we'll get into all that in just a bit. We will come to the setup and the test that Oakmont provided. So much to discuss. Brandel, I don't really know where to begin. How do you possibly sum up that major Sunday?
Well, Oakmont is, as Matt just attested to, and by the way, wonderful effort that you're on this podcast. You flew through the night. Way to go. Oakmont's the toughest test in all of golf. I guess there's a little competition for that. Maybe Shinnecock, 1999 Carnoustie. But it's the toughest test, and I think maybe even more so after the Gil Hanse renovation, and then with the rough. And then you add in the U.S. Open pressure, and then you add in the elements yesterday. Look, the 54-hole leader there, the last 3 times they've played the U.S. Open there, 2007, 2016, and this one, has averaged 78. And if you were watching yesterday and you just looked at the guys in contention, you'd have thought that the course was averaging around 80, but the scoring average yesterday was 73.1. I mean, that speaks to the tremendous pressure and sort of the confluence of Oakmont and the conditions. So yeah, I can't remember a more chaotic finish to a major championship that I've ever watched. I've seen exciting, like the Masters this year was more exciting, but this was as chaotic as that was exciting in my view.
I'm glad that chaotic is the word that you've settled on. That's the exact word I was going to use for it as well. Let's start with our champion, and what a deserving champion. Opened with a bogey-free 66 on Thursday. I think everybody, Brandel, probably thought at that stage, well, that's nice for him, but he'll probably fade away over the course of the weekend. Hung around all day Friday and Saturday. His rocky patch then came at the start of his final round. 5 bogeys in his first 6 holes. A horrid break on the second, we have to say, in the middle of that run. And you thought, okay, JJ's race is run at that stage. His chances of winning the tournament, Brandel, at that stage were 1.4% as he walked to the 7th tee. And yet, lo and behold, many hours later, after a weather delay, JJ Spaun is your US Open champion.
Yeah, I wouldn't have given him 1.4%. That's, it's funny. The morning of, we were talking to loads of people in the media. Who do you think is going to win? Almost everybody said JJ Spaun.
Really?
Yeah, almost everybody. Because the course was far more. If you hit it in the rough, you were going to make a bogey, and he was the straightest of the bunch. And he was having a wonderful week on the greens and pitching the ball. And if you think about it, we know that Dustin Johnson won in 2016, and we know Angel Cabrera won in 2007. But in those 2 U.S. Opens, Jim Furyk finished second in both of them. Of the 28 people that played in both of them, he was low by 9. So we tend to just look at who won and not who played the best over those 2. And it was a control player. very much like JJ Spaun. And, look, I'm going to talk real quickly about the incremental success that JJ Spaun has had. In 2020, he was 145 in strokes gained approach. The next year, he was 127. The next year, he was 84. The next year, he was 51. The next year, he was 17. And this year, he's 5th. So that incremental improvement becomes exponential. You begin to hit shots and you begin to realize I can hit shots pretty much better than everybody out here. Then you begin to believe. And then you put him in a situation where he starts getting rewarded for finding fairways, like at the Players Championship. And then he competes and he hangs with Rory. And that belief, I think, came to fruition yesterday because he came on our set last night and I said, was your reset after being 5 over through 6? Was it a technical change or a mental reset? He said 100% mental. He said, I just kept telling myself, I belong here. I'm going to hang here, get sticky, stay with it, and then let it go and free up. And, if that's not what a U.S. Open is all about, all the other majors all have their own identity, I would say. But this is what, to me, a U.S. Open is all about. Who can execute? The Masters to me is about, it's about recovery. It's about risk and reward. And the U.S. Open, at least when I was growing up, was about who can execute, who can stand on a tee and know that there are consequences for missing a fairway. There are consequences for missing a green. And that clear-headedness came to the fore yesterday.
Absolutely. And to Brandel's point there, Matt, he was a different player after the weather delay, and weather delays can do different things to different players. I know you wouldn't have seen much of JJ's round from that point onwards, but it says a lot about his mental fortitude.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen something where his coaches were on the back of the range. I was there hitting balls and we were all warming up. But I've read something that his coach was just saying, you're trying too hard, you got to let it go a little bit. And something like as simple as that can really switch your mindset from trying to control your swing, control the golf ball, to freeing it up, letting it go. And that sort of change, sometimes from a coach, from the coach's mouth, is like something that can change your round. And he's gone back out there and proved it and played really well after the rain delay and being behind. It was a great performance. And I just think back to like things that happened throughout the year. That putt he had at the Players that just finished short,
he's one revolution short of being a Players champion.
And the last is going 3 foot, maybe 4 foot past. It was a great putt, but it goes in. These little changes in your career. He's been playing great golf, 8th in the world now. He's a proper player, proper star. He's a great guy. I get on really well with him, and he fully deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to see. There's more to discuss with JJ. Before we do that, though, let's briefly hear from our 125th U.S. Open champion.
I was having lunch with Max Homa at home. We live in the same area. We belong at the same club. And he was telling a Tiger story where he's like, as long as you just are still there, you don't have to do anything crazy, especially at a U.S. Open. He's like, Tiger said this would happen, and the wind will switch, but you just gotta stay there. Even if you're 4 back, you just gotta stay there. You don't have to do anything crazy. And I kind of was thinking about that out there this afternoon, where I was 4 back, maybe going back out after the delay, and then I made some good pars, nothing crazy, and got a really good birdie, and then next thing you know, I'm tied for the lead, I think. And within 4 holes of the restart. So that just kind of goes back to that. You just try to just stay there. You don't have to do anything crazy, especially at a U.S. Open. So all those things came true. Yeah, it's definitely a storybook fairy tale ending. Kind of the underdog, fighting back, not giving up, never quitting. With the rain and everything, and then the putt. I mean, it's just, you couldn't write a better story. And I'm just so fortunate to be on the receiving end of that.
Brandel, the 64-foot putt on 18 was the exclamation point. However, it's the tee shot on 17, which we will watch again and again and again. US Open courses, you said it yourself, and Oakmont probably above any other, demand that you execute the shot under the most intensive pressure. And boy, did he do that on the 71st hole.
Yeah, I think it'll go down, as one of the greatest shots ever hit under the pressure. It was the best shot I saw on 17 all week. And now I'm sure if I dug into the data, somebody hit it closer. But under the circumstances of the weather and the next to last hole, it's one of the best shots I've ever seen, ever, period. We still talk about Colin Morikawa driving the green in the final round of the PGA Championship, but it wasn't the 17th hole, it was the 14th or 15th hole. It was a heck of a drive. But you don't think about Colin Morikawa's win without that drive. Matter of fact, I challenged somebody to come up with another shot that he hit after that drive. But this hole was more difficult if you missed the green than the hole that Colin Morikawa hit when he won at Harding Park. So we saw what happened with Tyrrell Hatton when he missed the green there, right? We saw the great shots that Viktor Hovland hit from the hay to the right. I mean, what made them great is their difficulty. And Matt can speak to, I don't know, where that pin was. I would imagine if you missed it left, you were short-sighted, didn't have much. Or did you have much?
Yeah, there was a slope, it's very difficult to see on TV, but there was definitely a slope from right to left on the green. So if you did miss it right where the green, you had more space and more room to chip up from. It was kind of all facing away from you. So if you did miss it on the left-hand side, it was uphill, but there's a big slope that if it was short, you're coming back down off the front of the green.
What did you think of his tee shot, man? I don't know if you've seen it. You were busy playing, but
yeah,
I was blown away by it.
It was amazing. You have one thing to aim at on that tee shot, and that's the flag. And the flag sometimes isn't in the right area where you need to land it. But on that day, it's slightly tucked on the left-hand side, so it's a straight shoot up to the pin. But if you miss it slightly right, you're in that trap or on that downslope where Tyrrell was. You miss it left, like you say, you're in thick rough, which is kind of short-sided. You have a gap of maybe 5 yards, and he's flushed it straight to the front edge of the green, and it's rolled up past the pin to a spot where I had a birdie putt from, which was a quick downhiller left to right. But oh my God, like you say, Brandel, in that moment, that's a serious shot in the time, and probably contender for shot of the year.
Yeah. Look, JJ Spaun's previous best major before this one was a tie for 23rd at the Masters 3 years ago. He didn't play any of the majors last year. This was only his second U.S. Open. In 4 weeks' time, he'll be teeing it up in his first ever Open at Royal Portrush. This is a guy who considered quitting the game. He is now, as Matt said, the world number 8. He's a shoe-in for the U.S. Ryder Cup team. And he's a major champion around arguably the toughest course on the planet. Matt, this is kind of one of the reasons we love golf, this incredible, almost impossible rise that nobody saw coming.
Yeah, the turnaround. But it's credit to him and his team and what they've done behind the scenes, which we don't all know about. Obviously, Brandel's spoken about his approach play, which is just continually seen improvements, which will give him a lot of confidence. He's been very consistent this year. Has he had 3 second places? Sony players and
Cognizant, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, tough golf course as well. The players, obviously, what he did there against Rory. The guy's a stud. The guy's playing great golf, and he's doing it consistently. So I was pulling for JJ a little bit because of how he's gone throughout the week. Like he set the tone at the start of the week. He's hung in there. He's kind of like the understory. No one really talking about him too much. Going out in the final groups on Saturday around that way, and no one really talking about him. He's sticking in there, and then he's bad start and he gets it back and then wins. It's an amazing story.
Matt, it's part of the reason you're pulling for him, because his story kind of resonates a bit, that it doesn't all come to you straight away like it did for a Jordan Spieth or a Rory McIlroy. Yeah. You work your way up through the Alps Tour, you get onto the European Tour, you win in the European Tour, you get your PGA Tour card. Now here you are contending in majors. Can you see a little bit of that with JJ as well?
100%. It's not like the trophy goes to the person that it should do. This guy's earned it, and he's earned it the hard way. And you can see what it meant to him at the end. Just like he was shaking, he was crying. It was just like pure emotion. And I don't know how it looked on TV, but all I could imagine is that people watching it going, "Wow, what an amazing tournament!" And for me to be a part of that was great. And just from my point of view, the understanding of how hard the golf course was playing and how difficult it must have been in JJ's head, and it was in my head after I shot under par round on the Saturday. I didn't really want to have to go back out there on Sunday. I was like, oh, I've got to do it all over again. So it was I couldn't. Yeah, for those guys to have to deal with that being in contention, that's difficult. And JJ and all of the guys at the top have done a great job.
Yeah, look, it was thrilling. It was heartwarming. One just final thing I want to say on JJ before we get to the other runners and riders. His Sunday began with him having to make a 3 a.m. dash to a 24-hour pharmacy to get medicine for one of his daughters who'd been sick all night. Then, on Father's Day, of course, he has the most life-changing win of his life. And many of you will have probably seen the photos of him sitting with his scorecard, signing his scorecard, both of his wee girls sitting on his lap. And as a dad to 2 young daughters myself, that was just a beautiful image. So congratulations, JJ Spaun. Let's get to a runner-up, because when all around him were losing their heads, Bob MacIntyre played his last 12 holes bogey-free in 3 under par, a closing 68, and a touch of class to boot, Brandel, because watching on from recording, applauding JJ Spaun's winning putt.
Yeah, what a moment that was. One, a phenomenal round of golf, almost good enough to win a U.S. Open. And to see him react that way. Look, the average tour pro 3 putts more often from 32 feet than they make it. So your odds are more likely that you are going to 3 putt from 32 feet than you are going to make it. 64 feet is twice that. So the odds would have been far, far greater that he was going to 3 putt than make it. So Robert, you're sitting there, you're thinking he's probably got a 10% chance of 3 putting this, maybe more. Yeah. I have to look that up. But nonetheless, you're thinking, I've got a chance. I'm still in this. And then he makes it. And his initial reaction is to applaud him. I was like, that's the height of sportsmanship right there. Can't say enough great things about Robert McIntyre. There was a moment last year when he was contending in the Canadian Open, and he eventually won it, where I was so impressed with his ability in the moment, because the drones were bothering him. You remember this?
I do, yes.
And look, drones are a thing, and everybody likes them, and I like them, and they're great. But for him to have the clear-headedness to back away and say, I'm not hitting this shot until you move that drone, I thought that just spoke volumes about his belief. And look, it's a trend. It's so easy just to say everybody's doing this. I'm going to look bad if I persist and say I'm not hitting this shot. But no, he did. He didn't do it in a mean way at all. And they moved the drone and he hit it and he went on to win. And then he won the Scottish Open. And those were great moments. But he got up on 17, not unlike JJ Spaun, and hit a fabulous tee shot. And I think I heard him say, be right, or be the right club, or not the right club.
Be as good as you look, I think it was.
Be as good as, is that what he said?
Yeah.
And I thought, golly. And then he striped it on 18 as well. So I can't say enough nice things about him. I was a fan before. I'm a bigger fan now. And it even added more excitement to the outcome. It's like, where did this guy come from? And for a while, it looked like he was going to win it. But anyway, it just added to it and made it more wonderful. I'll never watch him again without thinking about that moment.
He's going to knock on the door in plenty more majors. And Matt, you and I have known him for a while, Bob. He is a class act. There are some players who, when the chips are down, shrink from the occasion. And there are some who just rise to it. And he holds a great birdie putt in the 14th, a really testing par putt in the 15th. As Brandel says, hits a great drive, which just digs its heels in, unfortunately, in the 17th, but still makes his birdie. And then literally splits the fairway in two in the 18th as well. He's got some serious minerals under the gun, does Bob?
Yeah, he's got minerals. He's not afraid to win, as we've seen. I think the win in Canada really gave him a belief that he not belongs out on tour, because I think he felt that beforehand. But when you get that win amongst the crowd that you're against, you can go, well, I've done it. I can win anywhere now. And so that was just another notch in his sort of like his career that he's going to get into. He's a phenomenal ball striker. Yeah. Underrated ball striker, probably. Stats will show some things, but from a pure ball striking perspective, he gets club on ball out of the middle very, very often. We've got the same putting coach. I know it's been part of his weakness where he's trying to improve on that. a lot, and that was really good this week. Excuse me. And the guy's ballsy, you know, and
Yeah.
it's always nice to be able to do that in the moment. And he wasn't shying away, and he produced at the end.
I was going to say, you know, we can have all the stats in the world. One stat you don't have is strokes gained, size of cojones, and in that one, Bob MacIntyre has got to be right up there. I mean, there's a guy that I would trust standing over a putt at the Ryder Cup come September, and this result, this runner-up finish, gets him into the automatic spot. So, look, delighted for Bob, and he will be knocking on the door.
Jamie, just on the Ryder Cup bit, like I watched them at the last one with Rosie and in Rome. And Bobby was kind of a little bit shaky, which is obvious being a rookie there. And Rosie really helped him along. Trust me, Bobby MacIntyre will deliver at this Ryder Cup because he isn't afraid of anyone now.
Yeah, went unbeaten in Rome in the end. As we go down the leaderboard, Brandel, there will be so many players who feel this was a golden opportunity that they really let slip between their fingers. Bob isn't one of those, but Viktor Hovland is. Now, the last time we had you in the pod was actually the day after he won the Valspar, and we spoke about the fact that he'd arguably been the best player in the world a couple of years ago, had then tinkered and lost it, but was now inch by inch crawling his way back to the top. He is going to be a major champion, Viktor Hovland, at one point. I'm convinced on that. But he will be kicking himself this morning.
Yeah, he couldn't sort out his driver. Even Saturday night, we were on, and he was on the back of or on the range there, trying to sort things out with his coach Graham Waite, and it hit me. You know, it almost looked like they thought the house was on fire. But the more I thought about it, I thought, look, he was one club away from winning the U.S. Open. He needed to sort it out. He needed to figure out how to hit key drives and find it, because his numbers were very much like his numbers this year on tour. He was the middle of the pack, driving the ball very nicely with his irons. I think he was aided by the fact that there was thick rough out there as it relates to his scrambling abilities. It's not great off tight turf, so he had wiggle room under it, or he could play it like a bunker shot. And he was putting from the fringes, which is understandable, and he made a couple of them. They were all sort of hiding the weakness. He was only 4-13 going into scrambling wise going into Sunday, so he's got some holes in his game, but his coach said all they were trying to do is get back to the ball striking of a couple of years ago. And I'd say, yeah, good. I mean, that's great that they've figured that out and they're trying to do that. But in the meantime, I feel like he's cost himself some valuable real estate. A couple of years trying to change his golf swing when he was about, I don't know, 6th in strokes gain off the tee and 8th in strokes gain approach. There was only Scottie Scheffler from a strokes gain ball striking who was better than him. And there's really not much higher to go. Experience alone will make you a better player. And his weakness was around the green. So tinkering with his golf swing, I think, has cost him some time. And it's kept him from being the premier driver of the golf ball he used to be. I hope he finds his way back there. But I'm with you on that. He is an extraordinary talent. I love his attitude. I love the fact that he's had these difficulties. He comes up on the set. He's not afraid to face them and even do it in a lighthearted way. I love the curiosity that he has, but it can be a bit much. You can tinker too much. There's the sort of the plague of this era is that there's so much access to information and there's so much good teaching that you can get caught up in it, and you can get off track trying to get great at what you're already very good at. And I think he's a little bit of a victim of that, but it's great to see him playing his way back into the form he had.
I find him incredibly easy to pull for. He's incredibly likable. And here's one thing I love about Viktor, Brandel. Now, I'm guessing you're probably not a rugby fan. Matt is a rugby fan and knows that I'm a big rugby fan and an Ireland fan, obviously. You'll have to bear with me with this analogy. But not long ago, Ireland had a head coach called Joe Schmidt. He's now actually the head coach of Australia, who are about to face the Lions. He always used to talk about being focused far more on the performance than the result. And I think that is something that we see with Viktor Hovland, not just in a tournament, but literally on every shot. If he can execute the shot as he wants to, if the contact, the strike, the shape of the shot that he envisaged is right, then he's happy. He just loves golf and wanting to improve his golf. And I find that incredibly endearing. Matt, would you go along with that? And is that something you can kind of relate to?
I definitely see that in Viktor. I use the phrase with my team of taking care of business. So just taking care of my business, taking care of what I can control by putting a good move on it, striking it well, having a good sort of mindset to it, and the outcome will be the outcome from that. That's the best way to play golf. I've done that a lot this year to turn my year around, really, from where I was at the start of the year. And taking care of business for me is doing exactly what you just said there about not necessarily worrying too much about the outcome or trying to force the outcome. Taking care of your business, putting the right move on it, striking the ball as well as you can, then seeing the ball flight happen because you've moved well. That's exactly what makes a lot of the top players play well. I look at some of the older school players. You look at like the Lee Westwoods and people like that who hit the ball so well. Middle of the club face a lot. Very rarely goes wrong, especially with the new technology. And I see that's where Viktor is. Viktor likes tinkering and trying to improve and get better, but he obviously felt like something needed to happen or change or improve from when he was probably the best player in the world at one point. And as Brandel said, there's a lot of information and technology that we can use that sometimes we can go down a rabbit hole that really kind of takes us away from, taking care of our business.
He will be winning majors. I've got no doubt about it. And I'm sure that Luke and Dodo are delighted to see him starting to return to the sort of player he was a couple of years ago as well, with the Ryder Cup in mind. Sticking with the theme of players who will feel like this is the one that got away, let's move on to Tyrrell Hatton. Tee to green, a masterclass over the weekend. I think he hit 13 of 14 fairways on Saturday and was staying, I'm going to say, relatively patient by Tyrrell's standards. He was still chuntering away and feeling like everything was unfair, but he seemed locked in. And then he then bogeyed the last two. But for so long, Brandel, I thought this is Tyrrell's tournament.
Agreed. I love watching him play. I love his antics. I don't know him at all. I've been around him a little bit. I know people that know him quite well, and they say he's a great guy. His antics may rub some people the wrong way. Matt could have some clarification on this. I always feel like he's just yelling at himself. As a player, I think I'd be entertained by it. I don't know if it's annoying to play with or not, but it's damn annoying to watch. I mean, it's not damn annoying. It's damn entertaining to watch. I love it. And overlooked is, I think, you're just talking about, Matt was talking about how solid Viktor hits the golf ball. Does Tyrrell just not flush it every time he hits it? I mean, it looks like that to me.
I think the most underrated golfer on the planet. Yeah. He is
the straightest ball flight I've ever seen as well.
Yeah,
like it very wavers a little bit left to right, never goes right to left. Really can shape it that way, but a little bit left to right. And just on his antics and the way he is one of the best players to get the frustration out and do that, and then the next shot he's bang on it. You know, so very much needed at a US Open.
And Matt, in that regard, the histrionics, the throwing the hands in the air and everything's against me, and that's so unfair. I hit a great shot. The course has just kicked me in the teeth there. I think it's worth saying that's very much an on-course persona, I think, that Tyrrell plays. Off the course, he's got a great sense of humor, very dry sense of humor. He can be very funny, very self-deprecating. Matt, I think that's something that is probably pretty similar with you. You can come across as a bit of a sulker and a bit hard on yourself, but off the course, as everyone watching and listening now can see, you're a decent lad.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I love the US Open because it takes me out of being that guy, because you can't do it. You just can't. You can't carry it on. You can't do anything that really will get in the way of that next shot. It's the best test of golf for someone who can sometimes carry on a past shot, or someone that can, be down on themselves for one miss shot or miss putt or whatever it may be. You literally cannot carry over a shot onto the next shot, because the US Open, it'll kick you in the arse, so badly. That's why Tyrrell's Tyrrell. Everyone's become to love him because of who he is, and he's taken that role. And it's quite nice. Back in the day when he wasn't producing results, you'd probably say, this is annoying. Why is he doing that? Smacking his club down, or histrionics and all that sort of stuff. But that is him now, and everyone knows him about that. And it didn't really affect him. Like, you saw it until the end there. He got frustrated with his tee shot on 17, finished on a downslope. For me, I thought I spoke about that with my caddy Jamie at the start of the week. If we were on that downslope to any of those pins, really, what are the chances of you actually keeping it on the green for the first place?
Yeah.
Secondly, making birdie, maybe. Would it have been better of just playing to the front edge of the green or even backwards, giving yourself a chip and putt from there for par? But Tyrrell's an aggressive play, went for it, and yeah, he'll be. I actually texted him this morning saying, like, great week. Don't be too down on yourself. As US Open golf, everyone got it. You just got it at the moment where you possibly could have won a tournament, won a major. Yeah. And he's fine. He's sound. You know, he's all good, and he's just an amazing golfer. And I'm pretty sure he will get one as well.
Look, God knows the game needs characters. Another thing that Tyrrell is incredibly gracious in defeat, and that was exemplified by when he was speaking to the media as JJ Spaun lined up his 64-foot putt at the 18th and drained it whilst Tyrrell was mid-sentence. If you haven't already seen this, have a little listen to this.
I sat in dining. Oh, he's hold it.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Unbelievable. What a putt to win. That's incredible.
What do you think he's feeling right now?
In shock, I would guess. Unbelievable. Fair play.
I mean, as someone who was close to the lead, does it feel a little better seeing him make that, for your own?
No, for sure. Like, look, I'm sad about how I finished, but I'm very happy for JJ. Like, to win a major in that fashion is amazing. Like, you can't have. Certainly, I'd hate for anyone to have any negativity towards that.
And Brandel, that was delivered with a big beaming smile on his face. It is a bit of a pantomime villain act with Tyrrell. Before we let Matt go, I just wanted to discuss Oakmont itself. There's nothing they can do about Mother Nature, Matt, but with all the rain they had, the course was still such a stern test. For me, one of the stars of the show this week. As brutal as it was to play, did the course shine for you?
Absolutely. I tried to go in there without too much of a sort of the mindset that this is going to be the hardest thing in the world, and I'm not going to be able to make a birdie. And if I hit it in the rough or the bunker, I'm making bogey all the time. I tried to stay away from that narrative because otherwise you're just cooked. You're dead. You can't do that. We did have a little bit of rain on Sunday, which softened it up. It got a little bit firmer come Friday when the sun was out for a couple of days. But there's no doubt that the rain definitely helped the golf course and scoring for sure. The ball's spinning back a little bit. You're able to control the ball from the fairway. Did make the rough a little bit thicker and juicier because of the rain, but I'm not sure what I'd like to know it if it was super firm and fast. Yeah. The fairways, the undulating fairways where it's running off sideways, and I can think of it like the 10, 11 and 12, even 12, the par 5, where it's massively left to right. You wouldn't be able to hold the fairway for sure because it would just run out into the rough. And the greens are so undulating. So anything firm and fast, if anything you're above the hole, you would have been like defensive putting. Whereas this week, it was a little bit more straightforward, I'd say.
Yeah.
But for one person to finish under par, I think is testament to the golf course, to the tournament itself. It's just so great that 1 under wins a golf tournament.
He only finished 1 under because he held a 64-foot putt at the last hole.
Exactly.
Brandel, none of your success US Opens was at Oakmont. I imagine maybe the toughest one you might have experienced was Pinehurst in '99. That would be a guess. But Oakmont, it stands the test of time. It's always presented so well. It tests a player's mental fortitude. Any US Open is special. That goes without saying. But a bit like winning an Open at the old course, does winning a US Open at Oakmont just put you on a little tier above the rest?
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. I think they'd be equivalent. The Open has its own personality. You're dealing with the elements. There's so much history that's the foundation of the Open. But the U.S. Open it's about execution. It's about intimidation. And there's no other golf course that is more about execution and intimidation. than Oakmont. Shinnecock, okay, we could talk about Shinnecock. Shinnecock's where they're going to play next year. I can tell you, Matt, if you liked the U.S. Open, if you liked what this was, I talked to the powers that be at the USGA, and they're like, this is what Shinnecock's going to be like next year.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more of it. I think they've found their way back. So I grew up, I didn't start playing golf till sort of the late 70s, but watching the U.S. Open in the mid 80s, I mean, this one reminded me of, going back a bit, 1985 was at Oakland Hills, and there was a player by the name of T.C. Chin who famously double chipped a chip on the 5th hole. He double hit it. He had a 4-shot lead over Andy North. He made a quad. Everybody was falling away. Andy North was finding every bunker. And he blasted out to a foot famously on like the 15th or 16th hole, one by one. And it was about chaos. And to me, that's what they're back to it after years of trying to figure out what they were. Chambers Bay, that's not the U.S. Open. Erin Hills, with all due respect, is a fabulous course, I think, but it's not the U.S. Open. I wasn't particularly fond of the setup at Pinehurst last year. The Wiregrass didn't have the necessary effect,
No.
Bryson, nobody's ever driven it as inaccurately as Bryson did last year in the U.S. Open and won the U.S. Open. That's not what the U.S. Open is. It's about execution, and it's about dealing with adversity. So Oakmont is absolutely the epitome of what the U.S. Open should be about.
Absolutely. Matt, just very final one. This year, we've had Rory completing the career slam at Augusta, Scottie, who, could go on to win double digits majors, adding number 3 to his growing resume. This was a very different major, but I would argue just as romantic. A surprise winner, sure. A journeyman completing a lifelong dream, a fairy tale, call what you want, but those stories are just as compelling.
They're the best for me. A lot of the top players get to win a lot, but JJ Spaun doesn't, but he's won one of the big ones, so it's everything that we all dream of, people who haven't won a major, and he's shown us the way now, and he's done it in a brilliant way, and he's playing great golf. I absolutely love Oakmont. It's got a place in my heart now for the rest of my life. It's the hardest test that I've ever had to try and overcome, and getting my one birdie yesterday on the 18th, my final hole, for my last round was something that I'll take for the rest of my life, even though it's only to finish 23rd. But it was a really nice moment.
Brandel, would you sort of go along with that? The last 6 majors we've had Scottie, Xander, Bryson, Xander again, Rory, Scottie again. Okay, JJ Spaun isn't a superstar like those guys, but seeing him break down in tears in the 72nd hole, seeing him hug his little girls, that's the romance we love in sport and in golf.
100%. Everybody out there, I mean, yeah, we talk about, the gods in golf, the Rorys and the Schefflers, but, there's roughly 10,000 guys trying to play professional golf all over the world, and they're all working their butts off. And it's such a small line between success and failure. It's not like most sports where there's 20-30% difference between the best and the average on their respective sport, and even the worst in their sport. There's 20, 30, 40% difference. And in golf, there's 2, 3, 4%.
Yeah.
The difference between the best and the last guy on tour is 7%. So it is such a fine line, and they're all working their butts off. JJ Spaun's coach was my coach for 10 years, Adam Shriver, and he looked like he'd been through hell yesterday on TV. And I've known Adam forever. I know how many tens of thousands of hours that guy has put into learning to teach, learning to coach, trying to learn biomechanics. He was the first person I'd ever even heard mention biomechanics. And he mentioned it to me, in the early 90s, So I know what he's done with JJ Spaun. That's why I know his data. And to see somebody who's had to work that hard as his coaches are working that hard, and then to have it come to fruition, and then to find the belief, if I'm a tour player and I am 145th in strokes gain approach, and I'm thinking, how am I even out? I would find such inspiration in what JJ Spaun did. Stay the course, work your ass off, get the best coaches around you, get after it. It pays off 4 years. There's somebody right now, maybe it's Matt Wallace, 2 years, 3 years down the road, who's going to win a major championship, who keeps a great attitude, he keeps a clear head, who puts in the time and then lets it go, just like JJ Spaun's coach was yelling at. Let it go, for crying out loud. If you don't get fired up by that, you shouldn't be watching this sport. You shouldn't. Let it go. And that's so hard to do, man. It's easy to talk about, but it's very hard to do in the moment. And he did it. It was
so
awesome.
Well said. Yeah, it was awesome. It was inspirational. We're going to take a quick break there. Matt, I'm going to let you go and rest up. Thanks for joining us, pal. It really is hugely appreciated. Just very quickly, your schedule now before Portrush?
Week off Detroit, week off Scotland Open.
I shall see you at Royal Portrush, my friend. Thank you very
sir.
much for your time. And when we come back, lots more to discuss. 54-hole leader Sam Burns, who looked to be cruising until a controversial rules call. And not one, but two Scotties. And just what is going on with Rory. We'll see you in a bit. Welcome back to the Sky Sports Golf podcast presented by Callaway and our look back on a wonderful US Open at Oakmont. Brandel is still with me. We've let Matt go and rest up. Let him lick his wounds after 4 of the most exhausting days of his life and an overnight flight back to the UK in economy, by the way, folks. So very good of him to have taken the time to speak to us. Look, we've discussed Tyrrell and Viktor. I said there'll be so many kicking themselves, and there is a pattern emerging here, because let's now get to the 36 and 54-hole leader, indeed the 64-hole leader as well, Sam Burns. Brandel, he looked in complete control after he'd birdied the 10th, which was after the restart, and then played his last 8 holes in 6 over par. Where did the wheels come off for Sam?
Well, when he hit his tee shot on 11, I thought it was a good shot. And, that fairway slopes hard left to right, and it rolled all the way down into a divot in the rough, horrid lie. And he had a horrid shot. I could point to 3 shots, really. It's his second shot at 11. His third shot at 12 when he had 125 yards and missed the green to the left.
Yeah.
And his second shot at 15. So those 3 iron shots, his iron play this year hasn't been strong at all. He's got plenty of speed, and he is the best putter on the PGA Tour. A lot of things to like about his game, but his iron play, he struggled with. Now, for the first 3 rounds, his iron play was brilliant. But the thing you have to be able to do is to adjust. And, when it's raining as hard as it's raining, and when the fairways get as wet as they do, you got to be able to pick the ball. And if you go back and look, he's taking big divots. And, you got to be able to pick it. You got to be able to make those adjustments. So, he was really having problems controlling the direction, the distance, with his iron play coming down the stretch. And so that's it. He always kind of struggles with his iron play. It's the thing that really holds him back. He's won 5 times on the tour, but to the degree he hasn't contended or even hardly ever played well in major championships, I think you can point to, he sort of always has holes in one aspect of his game, but mostly it's just been his iron play. And there's, you're familiar with reversion to the mean. And your weaknesses tend to get exposed under pressure. His iron play is his weakness. He couldn't lean on it, and that was pretty clear as he was coming down the back nine.
Yeah, funny. And much as the weather delay maybe reset JJ Spaun, it maybe halted his momentum and cost him a major championship. What will get all the headlines and what he will be ruining is a controversial ruling on the 14th. We'll discuss that in more detail. Let's first of all hear from the man himself.
When I walked into it, clearly could see water coming up, and took practice swings, and it's just, water splashing every single time. Called a rules official over, they disagreed. I looked at it again, I thought maybe I should get a second opinion. That rules official also disagreed. So at the end of the day, it's not up to me, it's up to the rules official, and that's kind of that.
Brandel, Sam incredibly magnanimous and gracious about it. It felt like a terrible call at the time. What do you think?
I don't know. I saw the posts, and look, I'm not trying to discredit the post or who posted it, but if the lie had been as bad as what was posted on social media, he would have persisted more that the shot was unplayable. I was watching it in real time, and you said 14. It may have been 14. I thought it was 15, but either way, I watched him, and I saw him taking his stance. These referees, you don't get to just You don't just get to referee the U.S. Open if you are a part-time rules official. They are the best of the best rules officials. And you don't get that last tee time unless you're extraordinary at what you're doing. So these are incredibly competent, hardworking people who know the rules with no biases. So, it's difficult for me to believe that they would have missed something as pedestrian as casual water. So I'm not in the camp that thinks that this was a bad call. I think the golf course was borderline unplayable for everybody in the field. And if maybe they were, I don't know this at all, but I mean, if they reached the level of tedium where they were granting drops to everybody for the slightest bit of I don't know that they could have finished the round. So, and the fact that look, the fact that he didn't persist demonstrably tells me that, one, he's incredibly mature, but also that he was willing to accept it and carry on. And in that moment, I mean, you do have to be able to sort of pick the ball. You have to allow for that. And if you go down and get it and you get more stuff, water, mud, grass between the club face and the golf ball, you're not going to be able to control it.
Yeah, it's a good point. And just to close the book on Sam Burns, you touched upon this earlier, but worth noting now, the last 3 54-hole leaders of U.S. Opens at Oakmont. In 2007, Aaron Baddeley with a final round 80. In 2016, Shane Lowry with a final round 76. And now add to that in 2025, Sam Burns with a final round 78. It is not easy being the man with the target in your back at a U.S. Open, Brandel.
And I will just go back and now say, if you go back to 1962, 6 of the last 7 54-hole leaders at the U.S. Open at Oakmont have not won. And they've come from as far back as 13th place in the case of Johnny Miller. So, I mean, it is an incredibly difficult golf course. But Bob Ford, who long at the helm there, came on our set, I believe it was Wednesday night, maybe it was Tuesday night, and said, the thing that's, the misconception about Oakmont is that it's brutal. Because it's not. If you hit the right shots, you can shoot good scores.
Yep.
You can shoot 63. You can shoot 65. But if the slightest mistake is punished there. So you allow to make these runs. So if you're under pressure, as you are prone to be more so than normal as the leader, you're more apt to make mistakes and you're more apt to get punished for them. Therein lies the lore of Oakmont.
Absolutely. Sam was playing in the final group alongside Adam Scott, who I think a lot of people were pulling for. That was the romantic story, I think, yesterday. And how often do we see two players kind of both get stuck in reverse and all the energy just gets sucked out of the pairing? Scottie was tied for the lead as he stood on the 14th tee, played his last 5 holes in 5 over par. But in all honesty, Brandel, straight out of the gate, it was unforced error after unforced error, and it just didn't look like being his day.
Yeah, he got bad breaks, with horrible lies. I mean, there's bad lies and there's horrible lies, and he probably got more than his share of horrible lies, at the first and at the 8th. But really, it was again the poor shot at 12, his third shot. He had 130 in. He missed the number by 25 yards. You can put some of that off to distance, but I mean, these guys don't miss numbers by 25 yards. So, and then he missed the fairway at 14. He missed the fairway at 15. And missed the green at 16. So as this tournament came to a close, as it became more imperative that you find fairways and hit great shots, only one person gets to lead the winner. That's it, one. And it boils down to who hits the best shots when the time is on, and that boils down to who has the clearest head and who's in most control of their game. And Adam Scott was the best story. Everybody loved it. He had been the second oldest winner. He's elegant. He is mature. He's thoughtful. He doesn't seek the spotlight. There's no self-aggrandizement with him. Even asked if he's in the Hall of Fame or should be in the Hall of Fame, he says, no, I don't think so. I think I probably need one more major. I'm on the cusp of it. He didn't just, brusque it to question and say, well, I've won 32 times globally, which he has. And he probably should be in the Hall of Fame on the merits of what he's meant to the game and his global success. But he not prone to self-flattery, self-aggrandizement. So he's such a popular player. But again, there can only be one winner. And when it came right down to it, JJ Spaun was executing, and Sam Burns wasn't, and Adam Scott didn't coming down the stretch.
So here is the question then, Brandel. He'll turn 30, 45 the day before the Open begins at Royal Portrush. It's now 5 years since he won a tournament of any type. As you say, I think you will struggle to find a player, caddy, official, member of the media, anyone in the world of golf with a single bad word to say about Adam Scott. He is a Masters champion. He is a Players champion. As you said, he has 32 professional wins. Will he get another chance at that elusive second major? And does his career need a second major for us to say that he fulfilled his potential?
Good questions. Yeah, I think he'll get a chance. They first started keeping track of clubhead speed in 2007. His clubhead speed was right at 119 miles an hour. Here we are. He was 25, by the way, then. He's 44 now. His clubhead speed is right at 119, 120 miles an hour. So the longevity of him physically is absolutely astonishing. For him not to, and I know he's had a few nags and, aches and pains here and there, but to be absolutely uninjured, the golf swing absolutely ageless, timeless, to look exactly the same physically and technically and athletically is a tribute to his maintenance physically. I know where he trains a fair bit, and he trains a fair bit in Congaree, back of the range, tight. It's like links, like turf. He's actually bought equipment for the gym there. Nice equipment. It was a nice gym before, but he just trains there. He's an ambassador there. He buys all this nice equipment, and they say it's just watching him work out is a sight to behold. So, it's a tribute to his tenacity. But yeah, I think he'll have another chance. The game is still, he hasn't lost anything off his fastball is my whole point. He's a fabulous putter. I think he'll have another chance or two. Who knows? And then the question was, does he need it? Well, Hall of Fame. I mean, everybody wants to be in the Hall of Fame, and I would agree with him. His career is it's sort of borderline. I know that it is. The Hall of Fame is probably too U.S. centric. It probably is too U.S. centric. Yeah, it's probably too U.S. centric. But Jumbo Ozaki is in the Hall of Fame, and he never won a tournament in the United States. Asaya Oki won once in the United States. He's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, they do look globally at players. I think he'll get in the Hall of Fame if he never does another thing.
But I guess the question, Brandel, is one major underperforming given Adam Scott's talent levels and his longevity? Sergio Garcia only won one major. I think that's an underachievement for a player with Sergio's talents. Lots of players are multiple major champions who aren't as accomplished a golfer as Adam Scott. Is one underperforming if he looks back at the end of his career?
Well, I think we put too much emphasis on wins personally. Look, Davis Love won once, Tom Weiskopf won once, Fred Couples won once. Those are three of the most talented people I've ever seen play golf. Colin Montgomery never won a major championship.
Never won. Yeah.
Are you telling me Colin Montgomery wasn't good enough to win a major championship? No chance. Colin Montgomery led the money list 7 years in a row in Europe. Nobody's done that. Tiger didn't do that. Nick Faldo didn't do that. Seve didn't do that. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. I don't believe that just wins matter. First place matters, of course. Second, thirds, consistency, global success. I think you have to take all that into account. How often were you a factor? I think we because when you win by one shot or in a playoff, oftentimes they are determined by chance occurrences. When you win by wide margins, it's manifestly a matter of skill. Not too many people come along where it is manifestly a matter of skill. But when you contend and have duration for decades at a time, it speaks to an extraordinary level of skill and hard work and determination. To me, that's what the Hall of Fame is all about. We put not far too much, but too much emphasis on just wins. And when you look at the body of his work, he's borderline. I think he'll get in. But if he won another major, I'm in the camp. And I think the BMW PGA Championship should be elevated. I mean, it's difficult to say, should we have 5 or 6 major championships? But the PGA or the Players and the BMW PGA Championship are the two next tier premier events. Adam Scott's won the Players. He's won a major. He ascended to number 1 in the world. He's won everywhere. So But I think another win, he'd go straight in without, that'd be it. First ballot, he'd get in. At this point, you'll have to ruminate on it a little bit. The same way you'd have to ruminate on Jim Furyk getting in. And I think Adam Scott should get in before Jim Furyk. Even though Jim Furyk has more PGA Tour wins, I think Adam Scott got to number one. He won a Players. Jim didn't. He's got more global wins than Jim. And these are the kind of things you parse around for the Hall of Fame. But one more major, he'd go straight in.
Yeah, and I'd just add to that as well. Your legacy in the game is something intangible. It's the way you carried yourself throughout your career as well. And he's always carried himself with such grace, such dignity. He is a great ambassador for the sport that we love. And he will play the Masters until he's ready to not play the Masters for the rest of his life, and he'll have chances at Open Championships. So I would love to see Adam Scott get a second major. Right, from one Scottie to another, the world number one, Scottie Scheffler, finishes in a tie for 7th. Now, Brandel was asked before the U.S. Open what the winning score would be, and he answered, whatever Scottie shoots. It was impossible not to think that, given his form coming in and just how this particular test seemed ideal for his skill set. The first 2 days, though, huge surprise. He was just not at the races tee to green, very unlike him. Then when he did find it, as we knew that surely he would, he couldn't hole a putt. Yesterday, I counted 3 lip outs, a couple of shortish missed putts. In total for the week, he 3-putted 7 times and missed 5 putts inside 5 feet. And yet, Brandel, as he stood on the tee on his 72nd hole, he was still a factor in this major championship.
Yeah, and by his standards, he played terrible. I don't know a single person that didn't pick him to win. I thought he'd win going away. I couldn't have been more surprised at how poor form he was in the first 2 days. I talked to Trip Eisenhower, walked with him on Friday, and he said this guy is got no quit in him. He hit it terrible and shot 71 at the hardest golf course on the planet. The man, the fact that he was able to scratch out a 71 day 2 is a testament to his tenacity. But it's probably the worst I've ever seen Scottie Scheffler hit a golf ball in the last 3 years. It's the worst I've seen him putt. 7-3 putts, as you mentioned, missing all those short putts. And still, you're right. He was in it. We do have to remind ourselves every now and then that these guys are human. I was asked oftentimes, is he reached the point where Tiger did, where it was Tiger versus the field? And it's like Tiger never got to the point where it was Tiger versus the field. Even at Tiger's best, he was a 40% winner, which is mind-boggling because 3 or 4% would get you in the Hall of Fame. That meant the field was always a better bet, always. Yeah. And Scott was almost 2-1 to win. He was less than 3-1 to win. But he finished, what did he finish? 7th? And he just played the worst golf he could have possibly played, the worst golf I've seen him play. That is a testament to his skill. But the biggest surprise of the week was both the way Scottie Scheffler played and I would say a little bit Rory's comments on Saturday evening.
That was going to be the way I went next, Brandel, because the record books will show this as a top 20 finish for Rory. As you said, it doesn't really tell the full story. He was a non-factor for 4 days. Didn't really look like he wanted to be there, I have to say. I think all of us thought that a weight would be lifted after the Masters. Instead, he seems disinterested, disillusioned, unmotivated. It all kind of came to a head when he finally spoke to the media after his 3rd round on Saturday. This is what he had to say.
So transparent with us and very available. Yesterday was 6 majors in a row, rounds that kind of stepped away. Has that been part and parcel to the frustration on the golf course? What do you attribute to this?
No, not really. It's more a frustration with you guys. But
In what way?
I'm just, I don't know. I mean, I've been totally available for the last few years, and I'm not saying maybe not you guys, but maybe more just the whole thing.
The whole driver thing.
Part of I mean, that was a part of it. That was a part of it. But it's not as if like at Augusta I skipped you guys on Thursday, so. It's not as if it's not out of the ordinary. I've done it before. I'm just doing it a little more often.
Is it part of the you kind of carried the tour with your awards for like 3 or 4 years feel like you've earned a break?
I feel like I've earned the right to do whatever I want to do, yeah.
You have, in relation to that, kind of almost addressed the fact that the tour does not require that kind of thing. It's almost like you're daring them to do so in some way. Is that, in terms of a requirement for the other players?
No, I'm not daring them to do anything. I hope they don't change it, because it would, it's a nice luxury to have. But I'm just pointing out the fact that we have the ability to do it.
Brandel, there is something eating at Rory. We don't know what. We know he's emotional. We know he wears his heart on his sleeve. We know there are faceless trolls on social media who do, for whatever reason, have some issue with Rory. I've been very consistent in saying, I'm biased. I'm from Northern Ireland and I've known Rory for a long time. But we are so lucky to have this man as an ambassador for the sport we love, someone who is intelligent and considered and thoughtful and eloquent. There was a huge outpouring of emotion for him at Augusta, which surely showed him, I would have thought, just how beloved he is. Yet at the moment, he is undoing a lot of the goodwill there is for him. And I just do not understand why.
Here's what I'd say to that. I think you'd agree. I think Rory is the best friend that golf has had over the last decade. He's the best friend that golf has had. He's the most thoughtful person in the media center. So let's just say you've got a best friend. You've known each other for 10, 15 years, and he's your best friend or she's your best friend. And then they start acting a little bit weird for a week or two. You would say, hey, man, what's going on? Everything okay? Hey, you need some time? I'm here, I'm here for you. Let me know if you need anything. You sort out what you need to sort out and get back to me. That's what you'd say. And I think that's what golf needs to do. We're too quick to judge. Let's extend a little grace and understand that people are human and they're going through things. I don't know what he's going through exactly. I don't know exactly what is at the source of this sort of edginess that he's displayed. But I think you got to give him some space. He's earned. He would like to, I'm sure, have those words back. Nobody earns the right to do whatever they want. Eisenhower didn't earn the right to do whatever he wanted. Churchill didn't earn the right to do whatever he wanted. He'd like to have those comments back. But he's earned the right to get some grace for sure. And I think golf needs to just, take a deep breath and go, look, I don't know what he's going through, but let's not burn that bridge with Roy. He's been too important to golf. And I'm certainly willing to take a deep breath and let him sort things out and come back and start being the Rory that we all know and love.
And he will refine that motivation. He will refine that raison d'etre, and perhaps Portrush, coming when it does, is just exactly what he needs. And he's touched upon this as himself as well. He says, if I can't get myself motivated for an Open Championship in Northern Ireland, then I really am in the wrong game. So maybe Portrush is just the kick that he needs in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe the achievement of completing the career Grand Slam. Nobody's ever taken as long that's completed the career Grand Slam. And nobody's had as much scrutiny heaped upon them in the process. So nobody in the history of golf has ever endured the highs and the lows of what Rory has. And so there's really no precedent for how people respond to something like that. And so maybe he himself is wondering, I should feel more, I should feel less, and maybe that's putting him on edge. Maybe it is the driver and how it was broken, who broke it, and how it's being reported, and maybe there are people, because you well know there are so many people in the media now, and not all of them are trying to tell the best stories about the game. There's some that are looking for clicks and likes, and that's just an unfortunate aspect of this era of everybody's a journalist. And so maybe that's what's got him in a tussle. It's hard to say, but again, I would say we treat it like he's the best friend. And what do you need? I'm here for you. I hope you get it sorted out. Give me a call if I can help with anything. And I have no doubt he'll return back and be his jolly, wonderful self. And look, he played brilliant golf on Sunday. He did an interview with Kira K. Dixon Sunday morning. I think y'all ran it on Sky.
Yeah, he was much cheerier.
He was. I mean, Kira's delightful, first of all, and she said she gave Rory the thumbs up or down, like, or would you do an interview or not? And Rory looked at her and went thumbs down, and then he goes, no, I'm just kidding. Of course, I'll do the interview.
Yeah.
And he was delightful, and then went out and shot 67, and so he'll get back on track. He drove the ball much better. I'm not worried about Rory. I'm not. He'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think being back on Irish soil and seeing just how much that entire nation adores him will be the world of good for Rory. One final piece of business from the U.S. Open. Wyndham Clark smashing up a couple of lockers in Oakmont's locker room, which is almost museum-like, unchanged in over a century, a shrine to the history of the game. For not just a major champion, but a winner of this very championship 2 years ago, that is a terrible look.
Yeah, reprehensible. I don't think the word disappointing really covers it. He was a guest. He's a guest there. He comes into the club for a week. Imagine having a guest at your house who, I don't know, didn't like what you served and threw plates around and just acted like a baby. I think this era of golf, and I'm not painting with a broad brush here because there are wonderful people playing professional golf right now, but it has given us a disproportionate number of entitled, spoiled, rotten professional golfers. And you can hear it in their comments, and you can see it in the way in pro-ams, they're off the back of the green and they're not paying attention to their pro-am partners. That's an important thing to do. And I'm out there on the golf course, and I see that they're not paying attention. And you see things like this. It's rare. It's not prevalent. It's rare. But the entitlement of this era is the unfortunate aspect of all of the concessions in this game being made for top-tier players, and nobody's holding them accountable. They get away with dropping F-bombs on the air. I mean, at least at Sky, y'all apologize for them every time you hear it. In the U.S., they just ignore it. And I'm like, if I were the commissioner for a week, there wouldn't be none. It would end. You're fined $250,000 every time I hear an F-bomb on the air, and it doubles every F-bomb. I'll find your number. I'll find the number that makes you stop. If you're on TV and it's inexcusable to drop F-bombs every dadgum shot, and it's hard to watch a telecast without and we all know the players that do it, and just dropping F-bombs left, right, and center. To me, that's entitlement. That's a lack of self-awareness. And I'm no prude. Look, I've played golf. I've said those words before on a golf course. I have. But I'd like to think if I knew that every shot I was hitting was broadcast, I would be a little bit more judicious in my vocabulary. Jack would miss a shot, Nicholas, and go, "Oh, Jack." There's no reason. There's no reason to be dropping F-bombs left, right, and center. And I know that the whole golf world's become a lot more bro-y, but not everybody watching golf is locker room minded. You can be sitting there watching the game with your kids who are 4 or 5 or 6 or who are thinking about playing the game. They shouldn't have to be exposed to that. And similarly, what Wyndham Clark did, there should be a significant fine. They make too much money, $250,000 for that. And you don't get to play the tour for 6 weeks. It should be a significant fine to send a message that that's not how we act as a group. But there were so many great examples of great sportsmanship between Adam Scott and Sam Burns handling the drop, and Tyrrell Hatton applauding JJ Spaun and Robert MacIntyre. We shouldn't let those acts of great sportsmanship be overshadowed by the just immature and lack of self-awareness of Wyndham Clark.
I think that's very well said. And I will just add to your pro-am point, try talking to Padraig Harrington about pro-ams. He says he sees them as a golden opportunity to meet people from different walks of life who would never otherwise get to meet. And he chats away non-stop for 5 hours straight with his pro-am partners. I think to the point where his pro-am partners almost wish Padraig would shut up because he just never stops Padraig. So that's the right attitude to have.
100%. I tell you, my wife, Bailey, she was covering the Senior PGA Championship last year, and Paul McGinley, who I just love, Paul said to Bailey, he said, come on, I want to take you out to dinner. Let's go out to dinner. I'm going to bring Padraig along. And so Padraig, I think, had shot like 77 that day. And he sits down and he finds out my wife loves golf. And he's like, show me your swing. Let me see your swing. And Bailey's like, oh, good gracious. You don't want to see my swing. He goes, no. I do. I want to see your swing. So she finds a video, shows it to him. He goes, all right. I don't know what Brandel's telling you, but here's what I think. And Bailey goes, he goes, no. And so for like an hour, he wants to help her with it. He gets her up, he tells her to swing, whatever. And she's like, he is the nicest guy on the planet.
Yeah.
And I think literally, if you ask me to name the top 10 things in golf, Padraig Harrington is right near the top.
Oh, I would agree.
And look, everybody can't be Padraig Harrington, but you can take a cue from him. And I used to similarly think when I got paired in Pro-Ams, I thought these are the most successful, the most interesting people I may well ever meet in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe I get 5 hours with the CEO of AT&T. I can't believe I get 5 hours with Jamie Dimon. I can't believe that, and give him a lesson, talk to him. Where'd you come from? What'd you do? What's the best thing that ever happened to you in business? What's the worst decision you ever made? I mean, it's such a gift. And I see the tour pros on the back of the green chipping. It's like, come on, man. Those are the people that pay your salary.
Yeah.
Go over, have a laugh with them, have a chat.
Yeah.
So Padraig and I and you, and we're all in agreement.
Yeah. They broke the mold when they made Padraig, I have to say.
They did.
Quickly, some other news from the last week. Carlota Saganda, a winner again after 8.5 years. She won the Mayor LPGA Classic in Grand Rapids, Michigan by a single shot. She had this to say: it feels amazing. I knew I could do it, but obviously once the years keep going and you start getting older, you start doubting yourself. Congrats to Carlota. And after Maya Stark becoming a major champion just a few weeks ago, lovely to see another European victory. Will that continue? Because coming up this week, we have another women's major, the KPMG PGA Championship in Frisco, Texas. Amy Yang defending her title. The U.S. Open was a thriller at Erin Hills, so let's hope we get another. On the PGA Tour, how do you follow a major like that? Well, with some difficulty, but we do have a signature event with all the big names involved, the Travelers Championship, at a wonderful golf course, TPC River Highlands, which always provides plenty of drama. The DP World Tour still having a break before their European swing resumes next week with the Italian Open. But that about does us for today. Brandel, thank you so much for your time. We've had Brandel, this is let you behind the curtain, folks. Brandel has stopped at a motorway service station just to talk to us today. We had Matt Wallace getting off an overnight flight in economy and talking to us, the things people do for the Sky Sports Golf podcast. So thank you so much. And Brandel, I have to ask, that has really whetted the appetite for me for the final major of the year. How excited are you for the Open at Royal Portrush?
I couldn't be any more excited. I was lucky enough to play Royal Portrush a few years ago. I'd never played it. I couldn't believe the golf course, how beautiful it was, how playable it was. Having gone back there in 2019, I mean, I don't know how you could dream up a story any better than that. I think Rory has unfinished business there after 2019 and after what's gone on the last month. So I expect Rory to be in better form. I couldn't be any more excited getting there. We've had a banner year of major championships, and you just wonder, how is it going to conclude? I feel like it's going to go out on a high. So I can't wait to get there. My wife and I are going over early. We're going to play some golf in Scotland, then we're flying over to play Royal Dublin. We're going to play Port Marnock, and then make our way up to Portrush.
And we will definitely be having a pint of Guinness together, Brandel. Make that promise to me.
I'm all in on that.
Good, man. And I can tell you, let me assure you, being from that part of the world, all that rain that we had in Pittsburgh, genuinely, in my 18 years growing up in Northern Ireland, I cannot recall it raining once in Northern Ireland. We're bound to have glorious sunshine all week long. It just doesn't rain in Ireland. Don't believe what you've heard.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I cannot wait for it. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun. If you've liked what you've heard or watched today, do make sure you give us a follow on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. A huge thank you, as always, to Callaway for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you again for your time, and do join us again this time next week.